You're listening to a Bored to Death Mandocast, talking all things Star Wars in easily digestible chunks.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Mandocast. I am Jay, being joined by
Chris.
And no Zeke this time. He's on vacation with his wife. Hope he's having a good time. We're behind a couple weeks. Just life got in the way.
Yeah.
Scheduling and everything. But so we're back to catch up on the last two episodes of The Bad Batch. When we last left them, Omega had been abducted by Cad Bane, who was going to deliver her back to the
Caminos.
The Kaminoans, yeah. For a moment, I couldn't remember the name of their race for a second. I was just like...
Those long-necked aliens.
That looked like a stretched-out gray.
Somewhere Fox Mulder is pissing his pants.
But Cad Bane ran headlong into Fennec Shand, who had been hired by one of the other Kaminoans who had basically been objecting to the Prime Minister's plan. Because the Prime Minister, since the clones were being phased out in favor of conscripts, he wanted to basically be like, we're just going to make better clones. But the problem they had is Jango Fett's DNA sample is starting to degrade. And so they need as pure a DNA sample as they can get. Like, for instance, from a Gen 1 clone, like Omega.
And seeing as how they probably don't know where Boba Fett is.
Yes, and as was established in the previous episode, there are only two known Gen 1 clones in existence. Alpha, Boba Fett, and Omega.
Who doesn't have an established name.
Well,
outside of...
Omega is her name, basically, as far as she knows, because Alpha is just what the Kaminoans called him, but when they gave him to Jango as his payment, Jango named him Boba. But we still don't have any additional information on why they made a female clone, or who her other genetic donor would have been. But
well, like I said, if they're able to make clones, they can change the chromosome.
Yeah, and this is true. This is Star Wars sci-fi. You know, they sort of hand-wave the science sort of thing. It's just sort of like, it's fine. They did a little bit of tinkering on the back end to make sure that everything worked, and it didn't just sort of turn into some sort of nightmarish, kill me abomination. Like in Alien Resurrection when they found.
That's actually what I was going to bring up was. In Alien Resurrection, they made a Ripley clone that had a clone of the Xenomorph Queen inside of her from Alien 3.
Yeah, and some of the genetic crossover from that is why there were all those other failed Ripley clones in the lab that she set on fire, which Ron Perlman's character is just sort of like, what a waste of ammo.
Or the way Spoonie put it, what an angry lady, waste ammo.
Yeah. But, yeah, the Batch managed to rescue her. Bane survived, but, his ship was sabotaged, and Fennec just sort of got away, because, of course she did. We know she does. This is one of the things that, jumping back and forth in the Star Wars timeline does. It's just like, certain characters are going to survive.
And they're meant to.
Like Fennec Shand, because she shows up in The Mandalorian.
And she gets shot by No, she doesn't get shot by the Mandalorian. She gets shot by the other guy.
Yeah. I can't remember his name now.
A one-off character.
Yeah.
Unless they bring him back for season 3.
I somehow doubt that.
Or Book of Boba Fett, where she hunts his ass down and shoots him.
He got blasted pretty hard by Mando, and Mando's not the kind of person who's going to leave that sort of thing to chance.
No.
I mean, the only reason Fennec survives is because the other guy shot her in the gut and didn't bother to double tap.
Whereas Mando double taps.
Yes. If he doesn't just disintegrate.
No,
I forget, what did he use to kill the guy in that?
We gotta rewatch that episode, because I can't remember.
Anyway, but we during all this, we know the Empire is sort of organizing things for their tyrannical rule of the galaxy by, declaring all Republic credits are no longer valid or accepted within Imperial space. But you can trade in your Republic credits for full credit and shiny new Imperial credits. All you have to do is give us a sample of your DNA and sign up for a register. And then you're good.
I just want to be that one guy that hands him his pair of underwear and walks away.
There have probably been a few of those. Just one of the things that occurred to me while I was waiting for you to get ready to come down so we could record this is Palpatine clearly had things in motion before he straight up declared the Empire.
Oh yeah, it's called pre-planning.
Yes, but it's just like the whole economic change, with no Republic credits, Imperial credits thing, happened within a few days of Order 66. And Order 66 was basically when the Empire more or less kicked off. Yeah, the full, his whole speech where he declared the Republic, or the Republic was dead and everything, happened just a couple days after that. But it's just sort of like, and then it was a couple days after that big speech, suddenly the chain codes became a thing, and it's like, this is the only way you're going to get Imperial credits now. So it's just like, yeah, he had a lot of pre-planning in place, and I appreciate that Filoni and Favreau, while they're not straight up expositing all this stuff, they're at least sticking little things in there to indicate, there is stuff in the background that sort of makes this stuff work. Sure, it breaks down later, but, they knew what they were doing.
They had to have planned everything like leading up to them actually working on these shows.
Yeah.
What was it in the second episode of Mandalorian, or second or third episode of Mandalorian, where he finally drops the baby off?
Yeah. It was episode 3. Because episode 2 was all about him having to get his parts back for his ship.
No, it was the first one when he was accepting the payments for the bounty.
Oh, yeah, it's like Imperial credits aren't worth much anymore.
Yeah, he's like, the Empire's gone now, right? But then he tries to give him like 2 or 3 other forms of payment, and I think he ends up taking the Imperial credits.
No, he ended up taking the little jelly tab things, the calamari, the Mon Cal, whatever.
The Mon Calamari shit, or whatever it is.
It's just sort of like, and even then that was worth less than what the Imperial credits would have, were nominally worth, but then again, Imperial credits aren't worth much anymore. It's like he ended up taking what forms of payment were still viable, and even then he acknowledged it's not as much as it should be. But that's because this is the only currency that still floats. But so now we've got a couple episodes, and from the blurbs here on here, we got one that's going to focus some on the Batch, and one that's going to probably bring Crosshair and the Empire back into play. First episode is Common Ground. The Batch has their ideology challenged. I completely screwed that up, but
You tried.
I'll come back for this for the second one. Devil's Deal. As the seeds of rebellion foment on an outer rim world, the Empire schemes to squash it.
Better.
Because I had to do my my Imperial propaganda or Republic propaganda voice from Clone Wars. But
It needs a little bit more practice, but you get it.
Yeah. Because, well, unfortunately, the guy that did it can't do it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, going back to the whole, it's like, certain characters are going to survive thing. This is one of those cases where some of the side characters, like Fennec,
we already know she's going to survive.
we know she's going to survive, but the Batch, Omega,
we don't know.
We don't have no idea. It's uncharted territory, and that's what makes this so interesting to me. It's like, again, with Clone Wars, you knew that Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme were all going to make it out of their various adventures alive, because it took place between episodes 2 and 3. And all 3 of them were in episode 3. You knew they were going to make it.
And that Ahsoka was going to survive the last 3 episodes of Clone Wars, because she popped back up in Rebels.
Same with Rex. You knew that Rex was going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But, everything else was all up in the air. With Rebels, it was, again, some of that uncharted territory stuff. You didn't know who was going to survive, who wasn't. And that's where we are here with Bad Batch and with The Mandalorian, because it's post-Empire, and none of the characters that we're meeting have turned up in the sequel trilogy. So it's like, it's completely up in the air who survives, who doesn't.
It's like what they kept saying in the original Mobile Suit Gundam: "Who will survive?"
Who will survive? But yeah, so 2-episode binge, and then we'll be back to discuss. So that, I think, will wrap up this intro, and we'll see you after the binge.
Hey, while we're watching this episode, you should go ahead and toss us a like and subscribe. If you want to reach out, do it via our social media on Facebook or Twitter at BTD_Bingecast. The Bored to Death Clan is part of the CKCC Radio podcast tribe, including J Bunny's Music Hub, the Race Nerd Podcast, Real Paranormal Talk, Ranking Tracks, Motivational Moves, Park Hopper 101, and The Nerd Table. Imperial credits may not be worth much, but remember to support CKCC Radio on Patreon. I have spoken.
And we're back. So, I was sort of right in that we were going to see more of the Empire sort of setting things up for their tyrannical rule, but they put more. It was sort of across both episodes. But I wasn't quite expecting what we got in the second episode. But we'll get to that in a bit. The first one, Common Grounds, sort of touched on the fact that this is just after the end of the Clone War with the Separatists, and we went to what was actually the Separatist capital, Raxus.
Right.
It wasn't, it was when they mentioned in the episode that it was the former capital of the Separatists that I was like, was that the planet that we saw in Clone Wars, where there was like an episode where we saw Count Dooku actually sort of like serving as like the Chancellor in the their equivalent of like the Senate.
We're talking about the. Oh, you said Clone Wars. I was thinking Attack of the Clones.
And I actually did look it up while we were watching. Yes, it is that same planet. So, but episode basically opened with the Imperial governor giving a speech in the capital city and like in the big plaza, being like, "This is for your own protection, for your own safety. We are working towards making a unified galaxy.
We swear, we are here to protect you.
We are doing this in your best interests."
Meanwhile, their fingers are crossed right behind their back.
No, their fingers are more just sort of like hovering just over the blaster. Just sort of like, you don't want to, it's like, we're doing this in your best interest. Don't make us get rough. This is the easy way.
And of course, the people there are just like, ha, bullshit.
Yeah, everybody, all of these civilians are like, you're the ones trespassing here. We don't want you here. We can, because they've been fighting against the clones, and now they've got clones occupying the planet. And the governor tries to force the senator for Raxus to give a speech in support of the Empire, and he can't go through with it. Basically incites civil unrest, so of course they send in the tanks. And
the Clone Walkers.
Yep. But before he gave his speech, he told his protocol droid, if I get arrested, and follow my instructions to the letter. And so his instructions were to get word to Sid, and have him get rescued and extracted off the planet. And so of course it goes to Sid, and so naturally she sends the batch to go deal with it. But given that they've just returned from rescuing Omega from Cad Bane, Hunter's just sort of like, we're going to a planet that's crawling with Imperials.
You're staying here.
Yeah. She's not happy about it, especially when Sid just tosses her a sponge and is just sort of like, get to work. Yay, child labor!
And then I said, well, we saw that predominantly a lot in the movies.
Especially in The Last Jedi.
Oh, God, yeah.
And as I commented, it's like Han was sort of being forced to be child labor for that weird grub crime lord thing
that was sensitive
in
to sunlight.
Solo. And now in Omega's case, while she's stuck there, sort of moping, Sid tries to be like, stop being so helpless. if you think life isn't fair, then get off your ass and do something about it. More or less is more or less what she said. And she then is sort of watching later as Sid is playing that like hollow like monster fighting game.
It's that game that we saw in the Millennium Falcon.
Atu, I suggest a new strategy. Let the Wookiee win. But, Sid is playing it against the two barflies that we see in every single scene inside Sid's.
Because those are the only other patrons in there.
Or at least her two regulars. And Omega sort of glances over at Sid and is just sort of like, I wouldn't make that move if I were you. And Sid's like, oh, what are you, an expert or something? She does her own move. She loses one of her little monsters, and she's like, all right, expert, what would you do next? And so she just walks over, taps a couple buttons, boom, Sid ends up winning the match. And then Sid's like, how did you know how to do that? It's like, I've got a good head for strategy. And so then she basically decides to have Omega start playing games for her, for money. And it was just sort of like, what's my cut? Sid's like, 30%. And she thinks about it as like 60. Kid drives a hard bargain. But back with the Batch isn't very happy about being sent on this run because they're being sent to a separatist world. They were in the Grand Army of the Republic, which fought against the separatists. But they go through with it anyway, despite their whole reservations about the whole thing and everything. And they manage to get the governor out of there. And it's basically more of the start of the rebellion starting to coalesce very, very quickly. It may not necessarily all the various parts of the rebellion may not coalesce into the Rebel Alliance until much later, but we're seeing the initial sparks that will eventually set the galaxy afire.
Literally.
And it was a pretty good episode. Again, sort of showing the early days of the Empire as it's starting to get set up to be the tyrants that we all know and hate. But it was the second episode, Devil's Deal, that both of us, when we realized who we were seeing, because the episode dealt predominantly with events going on the Twi'leks planet of Ryloth, and which we saw in the Clone Wars series. There were a few episodes that focused on things going on Ryloth because they had been occupied by the Separatists. The Twi'leks needed help fighting them off, and so they sort of reluctantly let the clones come in to assist with that. And now the Clone War's over, and the planet's senator, big fat motherfucker named Ta, is just sort of like,
I think there was a construction sign underneath his fourth chin. Under construction, fifth chin.
I mean, the guy is ridiculous fat. He has 4 of those like lekus, the little head tendril things.
I was thinking it's kind of like what Ahsoka has, but I don't.
Ahsoka's a different race.
I thought she was Twi'lek.
No.
Okay.
She's a different race. I can't remember what off the top of my head, but no, she is not a Twi'lek. And we know it, and now I know it's actually pronounced Twi'lek, which is what I'd originally thought. And then there was some episode of either Rebels or Clone Wars where they pronounced it Twi'lek, and so I'm just like, okay, I guess I was wrong. And then in this episode they pronounced it Twi'lek again. So
I guess some people pronounce things differently.
It's pronounced Twi'lek in the Rylothian because they all spoke with French accents.
That they did.
As you pointed out, because this was dealing with the Empire moving in to occupy Ryloth now, was very much like a France under Nazi Germany sort of vibe.
Yeah, but in this case, it's more like if Great Britain invaded instead.
Well,
they did try for world domination at one point.
Well, and it's not like the French. It's not like the British didn't try that a couple of times. But at any rate. But the big thing in this is that this was essentially a prologue episode for Rebels, because the episode focuses on the Syndulas. General Cham Syndulla, his wife, and their daughter, Hera.
Yeah, the second she popped up, and then Chopper popped up, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Well,
and then I guess at first we didn't think that it was actually him, and then he started making...
whoop, 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 whoop. And we're like, oh my god!
Oh, yes, it's Chopper.
Well, it's like, and I'd had a moment prior to Chopper popping up when the name Syndulla got dropped in there, and they mentioned Hera. I was like, wait a second, wait. And then when Chopper showed up, it was just like, oh my god, it is!
So that means we've already had 3 characters from Rebels in this.
We've had her,
Chopper.
yeah, and Chopper.
You know who the other one was. He was in the first episode.
Why am I going?
He was a
blank?
youngling. He was the youngling that took
God,
on
that's
Order.
right. Oh yeah, Jesus, I completely forgot.
Freddie Prinze Jr.'s
Yeah.
character.
Still sounding too much like him. They didn't pitch shift his voice quite enough.
They should have just gotten a creepy 13-year-old to come in and voice him.
I mean, it's whatever. But the episode was very batch light.
Yeah, they literally appeared in one episode, which, to be honest with you, like
one scene. In the
yeah,
episode.
which I know that there are like episodes of like other shows that have done this, mainly live action. I wasn't expecting this for a CGI TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, the Doctor Who episode "Love and Monsters," who the fan base absolutely hates, is a Doctor Who, or excuse me, it's a Doctor and companion light episode because the Doctor and Rose are barely in the episode. Mm-hmm. And then there is also
very much a bottle episode.
Essentially, yeah, and then there were the bottle episodes of Star Trek throughout the franchise. Mm-hmm.
It's because they blow the budget on all these other things, and they're like, "What can we do that's light on budget? What scripts have you got that we can use to throw in it for an episode?"
Like I was thinking of the Star Trek Enterprise episode, the one where Archer's dog gets sick, and he has to spend like a day or so in sick bay, and so the majority of the episode takes place in the ship's sick bay.
Yep. So they only have to use one set, basically.
It's one set, limited actors, and it's basically because they're trying to save budget money for like a much bigger episode.
Yeah.
But in this case, I don't think that helps when your show is entirely CGI.
And especially when one guy does like half of the voices in the show.
Yeah.
D. Bradley Baker is just like, I'm getting paid per character, right? If he's smart, that's what he did. But while the batch themselves were only in one scene, Crosshair was on the planet. We saw him in basically, in his Elite Squad armor, but now wearing like a regular Elite Squad helmet. The one that he'd been wearing previously was just sort of like an Elite Squad version of his Bad Batch helmet with the eyepiece.
I can't remember. Was that helmet damaged in the last episode?
I don't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised. We only briefly got a look at his face in this episode in like one scene. He was in the background, sort of out of focus, and the one time we got anything like close up, he was mostly in shadow, but you could see he had some scarring along the side of his head. Not, unfortunately, anywhere close to where the surgery usually gets done to remove the chip, but yeah, he's showing some signs of damage, but we can't really tell how bad it was. Then again, with Bacta, I suppose.
I don't know, man. If a Bacta tank can't fix Darth Vader's 4th degree burns, I don't think it's gonna fix that.
Well, I mean, in Vader's case, it's because he practically fell straight into lava.
Well,
And Anakin, all Anakin was wearing was basically his Jedi robes, whereas Crosshair, yeah, he got blasted. He got a face full of ion engine to the face. A face full of ion.
Imagine if it was
face.
at full blast, though.
Well, I mean, imagine if they hadn't blown the cowling off of the thing. That it had been more sort of concentrated. Yeah, it probably would have been worse. But he was also wearing armor, so that would probably have his wounds weren't anywhere near as extensive as Vader's.
No.
Who also, let's remember, is at least a triple amputee.
quadruple.
Was it all 4? I could have sworn he still had like one arm left.
It's been a while since I've seen episode 3.
Yeah. He lost his legs.
He lost both of his legs.
And I think he lost his right arm because that was the one that Luke cut off in Return of the Jedi and saw that it was also mechanical. And when he had that realization that he's trying to turn me into another Vader.
Like father, like son.
Yeah, basically. Maybe it's a quadruple amputee. Regardless, he lost at least 3 limbs. And Bacta's not going to grow that shit back.
No.
But yeah, Crosshair was very much sort of lurking around in the background, and then my phone just decided to blow up for some reason. Anyway, but yeah, it was just the main thrust of the whole thing is that Hera very much wants to sort of be a part of what her uncle is doing. Her uncle is still basically organizing more resistance to outside occupation.
I imagine that if he gets freed, he might be one of the founding members of the rebellion. Maybe.
There were some episodes in Rebels that focused on what was going on Ryloth, because when Hera went back there, like Thrawn had occupied her family's like mansion or whatever.
I need to go back and rewatch those episodes.
Mm-hmm. But regardless, at the beginning of the episode when Fat Todd gives his speech, trying to convince the Twi'leks that the war is over. It is time for us to put down our swords and take up the plowshares, kind of thing. But
they'll protect us. You just get back to work.
Yeah, it's time we rebuild. After,
well, they did say that the Empire did open up a bunch of new factories on the planet and therefore create a bunch of new jobs.
Yeah, the whole sort of it's like we're helping create jobs for you, sort of thing. Jobs that are on the planet. We're not outsourcing this thing.
Now get back into those coal mines.
Yeah, or dudium, I think is what they mining or whatever, or they had refineries for. But yeah, the Twi'leks are very much just sort of like, we can take care of ourselves. Why do we need your protection? And it's not until General Cham gives his own speech encouraging them to lay down their weapons. And in his case, it's like he's been fighting for most of his life, and he's just tired. He's just like, I want there to be peace. It's like the war is over. We can now live in peace.
But now he's got to form live la resistance.
Well, it was more that his brother, or at least his partner, what was it, Gobi?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gobi doesn't trust the Empire. Neither does Cham's wife, if we're honest. And of course they're right not to. Don't trust the Empire. And in Hera's case, it's like she kind of wants to work alongside Gobi and whatever he's up to, but her father's just sort of like, it's like, I want a better life for you. I don't want you to spend your life fighting like I did. Oh, the irony.
Because we know what happens to her later on.
It happens to her fairly quickly, too, based on the rest of the episode, but... and so when Gobi has another sort of mission, she goes to him. It's just sort of like, I can't come with this time, and he's just sort of like, we're not doing any more spy work. This is just a supply run. And she's like, I know, but I can't go. He's like, well, that's a shame. I was going to let you fly this time, because he knows what she wants.
Okay, I'm coming with.
Yeah, basically. He's not letting her do takeoff and landing, but...
I mean, she was... Well, I mean, it's like letting your kid park your car for you. But there was, the scene earlier on when she was laying down on her back and she's watching the birds fly by and she's got her hand in the air. She's acting like, like it's a...
Doing that, hand wave, waveform sort of thing.
It's a I don't remember which one it was, but in one of the later Robotech films, one of the pilots in it was doing that, where he was standing on a pier and he was doing the same motion with his hands. It was almost like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was intended to be a reference.
It wouldn't surprise me. Given what how popular Robotech is.
But at any rate, so she goes along with them on this little supply run. They land on like the nearby moon, not realizing that Crosshair has tagged the ship with a tracker, but they land on the moon there, which at least has an atmosphere, so they don't have to worry like.
Yeah, I was confused by that because I was looking at it. I was expecting to walk out with like something on,
some sort of like face mask,
something like a suit or something. But then again, you don't really see a whole lot of spacesuits in Star Wars.
Not full spacesuits. They'll have like the little clear like face masks things like Han and Leia had on in Empire Strikes Back
when they're in the giant worm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get out, and I was, like I said, I was expecting spacesuits. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I was like,
it's not like we haven't seen that there are planets that have moons that also have an atmosphere.
Endor.
There's a whole bunch of that. Like some of the in like Mandalorian space, there are planets that they live on. Then there are also moons that they live on. So this is probably a case like that. But regardless, so Gobi and them wait. The batch arrives on in their ship, bringing out some guns and thermal detonators, and Omega and Hera just sort of see each other and.
They kind of just kick it off.
Yeah, and Hera's just sort of like, what kind of ship is this? And Omega's happy to tell her, and then she's like, can I take a look inside? Omega,
hey, can she take a look inside? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and Hunter's just looks and just sort of nods, and so she shows off everything. So, and Hera's like, have you ever flown her? And Omega's like, no, Tech won't let me fly until I can recite the ship's specifications from memory. Which, to be... you can sort of understand, but at the same time, it's like, dude, she's like, what, 10 years old, or the equivalent of?
She's got to study.
Yeah. Yeah, studying. But, and Hera's just sort of like, flying is about more than just specifications. There's feeling to it. And, the two very much, like, kind of hit it off before, Hera has to leave with her uncle. And Omega's like, she's a little strange, but I like her. And it's when they get back to Ryloth that things start going south, because the Empire's waiting. Crosshair shoots down their ship by just taking out one of their engines.
That was a good shot too.
Oh, it's Crosshair.
Either way, it was still a good shot.
True. And then the shuttles fly in. They capture them. They find the smuggled weapons on there. And that's when General Rampart, who I forgot to mention was also sort of hanging out on Ryloth, because the refinery that they have, that the Empire built there, is part of some plan of his. We don't know the specifics exactly. But Rampart and Fat Ta show up there, and they arrest them all and decide to, ship them off to stand to basically face the punishment for treason. No trial necessary, of course. But the main reason that they're going along with this is because they realize General Cham, charismatic leader, possible problem if he gets fed up with Imperial rule, because the people will follow him. They don't like Ta, but Cham, yeah, they follow him. So, but they can't move on Cham because he hasn't broken any laws. And despite the fact that his daughter's on this ship that had been smuggling weapons, that's not enough of a link. But they know, hey, if we announce that his daughter's has been arrested for treason, he'll make a move. Especially if word gets out that we're going to execute them. And sure enough,
that's what happens.
As the Twi'leks resistance fighters move in on some blurgs and speeder bikes.
Yes, the actual big ass blurg things from Mandalorian are in this.
Yeah, it was just like in a background scene. I was like, "Is that a blurg?" And it was in a later scene. I was like,
I wasn't paying attention to what they were sitting on.
You were focusing more on the characters.
Yeah, I didn't notice it
until a later scene.
I was like, "Oh, okay, it is."
But yeah, and General Cham manages to take out some speeder bike clone troopers with basically a javelin. I mean, that thing that like he was literally just chucking a spear at them.
Whatever works.
Exactly. Well, it's not like that armor is necessarily capable of standing up to blunt force trauma.
As we've seen.
Yep. We remember that. We remember episode 6 of Mandalorian season 2.
That was a great episode.
When Papa Boba showed up and started whooping ass. He's like, I don't have to ask you to make you go cut a switch. I got one right here. Wham, wham, wham. But while he manages to stop the transport, Rampart is savvy enough to be like, just tell his like clone bodyguard, stand down. We'll surrender. And that's when, as this whole thing comes out, Cham like has a blaster right to Fat Ta's throat. It's just sort of like, you arrest my daughter and say she's guilty of treason. He's ready to shoot, but his wife is just like, no.
No.
And she sort of glances over her shoulder at Hera, who's in a land speeder with Chopper, and
it's like, not while she's watching.
It's just sort of like, take the moral high ground here. And Cham does. Problem is, he might have the moral high ground. Crosshair had the actual high ground.
He was way up there on that.
Yep,
damn
just
mountain.
chilling out there with his rifle. And once it became clear that Cham wasn't gonna take the shot, Ramparts just turns to Taz, just sort of like, well, thank you for playing your part. Gives the nod. Boom, headshot.
One single headshot was all that was needed to take his ass out.
Well, I mean, it's that the fat on his head is not going to stop a blaster bolt.
Oh, he just needed a few more layers.
I mean, I still don't know how well that would have worked. And because the only witnesses to that are Hera, scared little girl, by herself.
Chopper.
Well, if Chopper was even paying attention, and if he would even bother to testify. This is Chopper we're talking about.
Oh, Chopper, can you tell us what happened? What?
Well, no, it's like they might have somebody that can translate, but it's just like, Chopper, tell us what happened. He'd just be like shaking his head.
Crossing his little mechanical arms.
He can't really cross them that much.
And then Hera's just like, I've been meaning to extend those.
But it's clear what what the Empire's going to do is just say that Cham killed him, and then arrest him and his wife and continue with the occupation. Hera manages to get away because when the shot happens, her mother just turns like, Chopper, get her out of here, and just he's just zooms off. And it's just like, it's a prequel episode for Rebels, and it ended on enough of a cliffhanger that I suspect we're probably going to get a continuation of sorts in the next episode.
Do you think that we're going to get can't think of the other character's name from Zeb?
Zeb? I don't know. He'd still... Well, it's possible that we might see some stuff going on his homeworld.
Because I know that he said that his race and the Wookiees are allies. If I remember correctly, that's what he said.
Hey, I wouldn't mind seeing... there are so many ways they could throw in all sorts of fan servicey stuff like that. Like in the remaining 5 episodes of the series, because it's a 16 episode series.
We got 5 more to go.
Yep. And this is just season 1. It could be they could tell more depending on how the season ends. And I'd be fine with that. You've got 18 to 20 years to play with in terms of what's going on between essentially the end of episode 3 and beginning of episode 4.
Yeah, there is.
It's roughly 2 decades. You've got a lot of time you can play around with.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's gaps,
and I'm not saying we need to have
they could also fill in the gap between episodes 1 and 2, so they could show what happened between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones.
Because there was a good, I don't know how long between.
Well, they gotta think of how old Anakin is in Episode 1 and how old he is by Attack of the Clones.
Yep. Still a Padawan by that time, too.
Sporting the little ponytail thing that Padawans have.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I'm not saying that future Star Wars properties need to fill in the gap, fill in every single stretch of time. Not, having periods, having, like, the gaps between the trilogies gives you like a full generation of events to happen that characters can refer back to. It's like, and in the original trilogy, it was just literally just names thrown in there by the writers, and then it was during the Legends expanded universe that like every single writer and fan wank was just sort of like filling in the basically came up with a story for whatever it was. Like this is what Lando did at the Battle of Tanab, kind of.
Or
thing.
this was Han Solo doing the
Kessel run.
The Kessel run in 12 parsecs or whatever, and then the movie comes out and it's just like, yeah, none of that shit matters anymore.
I mean, they still had black holes in there, or at least a black hole.
That was a scary ass black hole, man.
Yeah, but in the Legends continuity. The black hole near Kessel was actually like 12. It was that, and it was called the Maw. I think it was still called the Maw in Solo, but in the Legends continuity, it was like a cluster of black holes like all around one another. But there was a space in like the center of it all, where the Empire actually like established a weapons development.
It's a hell of a spot to place weapons development.
Yep. And that's where they developed the Sun Crusher, which was a ship with a very hard to damage hull, but it also was armed with a torpedo kind of weapon that could collapse a star.
So it's the weapon from Star Trek Generations. Got it.
Yep. Or if you like, instead of like consuming a star like Star Killer Base to then shoot, it basically was just sort of like, I'm gonna just delete your star.
It's like, so we're gonna shoot that missile into that star right there. Bye. Have fun freezing to death.
The Sun Crusher was, and the Maw installation and everything was introduced in the Jedi Academy trilogy by Ken J. Anderson. I remember that because I read those books several times when I was like a teenager. So,
by the way, back to the directors for Book of Boba Fett.
Yes,
I had to look it up because they did release the names of some of the directors.
Yep.
Robert Rodriguez,
yes,
who has already directed several episodes.
Ooh.
Jon Favreau, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Dave Filoni.
So basically, the same crew that they kind of had for a lot of the episodes of Mandalorian.
Yeah, but
granted, Rodriguez only did the one episode.
Yeah,
but it was one of the best episodes.
They were probably like, "Oh, hey, we love the episode that you did. We think you did great. The fans love it. Do you want to direct the majority of the episodes for Book of Boba Fett?"
Sure. Do we know how many episodes it's going to be?
According to IMDb,
which is not always accurate, but
no, but it's close. They have 7 episodes listed.
Previously, all I'd heard was that it was going to be 4 episodes. So hey, that's already better.
So who knows?
Heck, maybe it was just like Boba Fett was received so well in Mando season 2 that they were like, they may have already had plans to do Book of Boba Fett, but then they were just like, we're just going to stretch it out a little bit more.
We're going to add a little bit more. But they've also confirmed that other bounty hunter characters are going to appear in the show.
Of course. Because it's not just going to be dealing with Boba, taking over Jabba's empire. It's going to, I think, flash back to show what he was doing in his earlier days. Both after he escaped the Sarlacc and, like, before everything happened in the original trilogy. Sort of showing maybe some of his rise to becoming one of the most notorious bounty hunters in the galaxy.
And I'm honestly wondering if whether or not he had to take the armor off of Jango Fett's body.
Oh.
Because he did say the armor was Jango's.
Yeah, but the armor would have been taken off his body already. It was probably more just a matter of getting the armor back from whoever had it.
It quite literally is a hand-me-down.
More like a head-me-down, but anyway.
But
yeah, it just brings to mind like how it should have happened moment from episode 2 when
you see Jango's head just slowly fall out and then plop.
Yeah, when Boba does the forehead touch thing to his father's helmet and then just head.
I just like imagine what it sounded like when you could hear it sliding out. Thunk.
Big wet meaty thump. But it was a good couple of episodes, and just the Star Wars Rebels prequel of Devil's Deal was just very much like put a big grin on my face.
You were just excited to see Chopper back.
Oh yeah, I love Chopper, especially when I saw a supercut of somebody like taking all of like Chopper's quote unquote dialogue from Rebels and realizing that no, it's like he's actually talking words with all that stuff. What? You gotta be kidding me! Like what, kind of thing. Or like one time when he got frustrated with something, just sort of like, and he's or like thinking something so unfair, and he's literally like, "What the fuck?" But it like it's what.
Somebody did the same thing with Bumblebee and Transformers Prime because he he doesn't use the radio to talk like what he does in the movies. Mm-hmm. It's almost somewhat similar to the way Chopper talks, but it's more of a wah sound to it. Because he does have a mouth that's just that because of his
throat injury.
Because of his throat injury, he can't talk normally. So somebody actually went and added subtitles to what he was saying. But they also did the same thing for Soundwave. And Soundwave doesn't talk at all in Transformers Prime. He has one line of dialogue in it, in the entire show, and that was it. But for the most part, it was just him, like complete silence and subtitles right below it.
It's just him just like glares silently.
Basically.
But yeah, it was a good couple of episodes, and we got 5 left. I'm assuming Ryloth is going to get at least one more episode worth of focus.
5 episodes of Bad Batch, 1 episode of Loki.
Yeah, that's right. We've got Loki. We got 1 more episode of Loki. And for those of you who have listened this far and have wondered why we weren't doing Marvelcast for Loki, life got in the way.
So we're just going to wait till the show
We're just going to do a wrap cast. It's not going to come out this week because Zeke's not here. And he's been watching it also. So next week, expect us to record a wrap cast, and so expect that for Loki. But Mandocast continues for Bad Batch, and after this, next time you'll get any sort of Mandocast from us will probably be Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, because
anything else Star Wars.
I know Book of Boba Fett is supposed to come out before season 3 of Mandalorian.
Yeah, they may have been intended to do it like back to back, but then COVID, and so they I think pushed that sort of delayed some of the filming for season 3. But regardless, the Mandocast.
Well, I know Jon Favreau's got to do some rewrites.
Yeah, Mandocast is gonna continue to cover all things Star Wars. Whenever, what was it? What's that new animated one called again? The Visions
for
Star Wars.
Yeah,
it's Visions.
Star Wars Visions. I think if I remember correctly, I think that was the one where. It's different. It's
more like an anthology.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Animatrix or Halo Legends.
Halo Legends, that's what I was thinking of.
Animatrix and Halo Legends were both kind of the same idea. Telling stories from the setting with different animators. And
because I remember I know that some of the animators are from Japan, so we're gonna get that Japanese anime style, but it's gonna be different styles of anime style. So. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Imagine if we had like a Miyazaki style Star Wars.
Imagine if we had a Miyazaki style Pokemon series.
I don't want to think about how weird that would be, but tell me that a Miyazaki Star Wars wouldn't be awesome.
It would. But tell me, okay, so how about this one, live action wise? a Seven Samurai style story with Jedis, directed by Zack Snyder.
We've already had Seven Samurai in Star Wars twice. There was that episode of Clone Wars, and then there was Sanctuary from Mando season 1.
Well, I'm talking about a live action movie.
A live action movie with that would be kind of awesome. The problem is, how do you make anything be a threat against 7 Jedi?
Oh, it's got to be the war with the Mandalorians.
Okay, yeah, or some maybe back in the Republic versus the Sith Empire days.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jedi versus some like Mandalorians. Now you've got me interested. I want to write that script now.
Because if you remember, what was it? The reason why the Mandalorians stopped fighting is because they realized the Jedi were too strong, so they waited to get stronger.
Yeah, but Seven Samurai style story like that. Yeah. Anyway, we're just rambling now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up before it turns into a full-on Ramblecast. But yeah, that wraps up this edition of the Mandocast. So for Chris, I am Jay, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to a Bored to Death Mandocast. Be sure to check out all the Star Wars content on Disney Plus and give us a like and subscribe. This is the way.